Heroic nanny risks it all to save child's life. The start of a family. This Californian gave birth to their child, a young boy that they would love unconditionally. Their worlds would revolve around their beloved little fox. Like most parents, these parents wanted to offer their child all the very best experiences in life. A stumbling block. Parenthood can often be a difficult and challenging endeavor. Parents often can be overwhelmed by the prospect of caring for a helpless and dependent child. Though this couple had the best intentions, the first-time parents would initially struggle. They just didn't know where to begin. Money is a priority. The parents knew they wanted to offer their son a comfortable, healthy, and happy childhood, but money proved to be a huge issue. Amidst the difficult economic times, both parents struggled to find work. They began to lose sleep over the dire financial situation. How could they take care of Fox? Busy work. The cost of raising a child can be daunting. Thousands of dollars are needed to provide for a growing child, not to mention the future costs of extensive schooling. They desperately needed to make money in order to take care of their son, but after months of searching for work, the couple became desperate, and they would soon make a difficult decision. A terrible situation. While looking for work that would help their situation, both parents knew they wouldn't spend too much time away from their young child. None of their attempts to find adequate work were successful. They dreaded the realization that they had to make a tough decision. They needed to be separated from their son if they wanted to provide for him. A third parent. The desperate parents ultimately decided they needed loving professional help in order to offer their son everything he deserved. They came to the realization that they simply could not do it alone. They began to look for a nanny, but they were determined to find someone extraordinary who had the compassion to take on the role as loving as a third parent to their baby. The search. It's a dangerous world out there, and the parents were adamant they wanted to find someone who was fit to raise their son, who was able to keep them from harm's way and instill the values they wanted Fox to have. They heard the stories of mistreatment by nannies, and they were determined to settle for nothing less than the best for their son. Finally, success. Whenever the parents weren't desperately looking for work, they would search for the perfect person for the role. They searched the internet for the ideal candidate. After countless hours dedicated to the arduous search, they believed they had finally been successful. They had found their nanny, the perfect candidate. Her name was Carolyn Maurer. She was a well-respected and committed student with straight A's and had first began babysitting at just 7 years old. She loved children and had a passion for child education. Though she initially seemed too good to be true, the parents hesitantly set a meeting to see whether the young girl was as worthy of the role as her profile suggested. The encounter. It was the first day that the Davis parents and their son met the lovely Caroline. The young girl blew the parents away. She was everything that they had been looking for. She was caring, compassionate, passionate, and attentive. The young woman was a true natural, and Fox seemed to take to her immediately. So happy. Fox's parents were overjoyed to have found Carolyn. They knew they made the right choice inviting Carolyn into their lives. Courtney later told the press, "I would always say she's better than we are. We are first-time parents, and we learned so much from her. Truly, I felt we lucked out. A beautiful relationship." Fox and Carolyn soon forged an unbreakable and special bond. Ultimately, Carol would care for the infant from when he was just 4 months old to his current age of 2. These are the most important years in a child's early development. The relationship soon would be tested when the nanny was forced to make a decision in a life-or-death situation. An unexpected situation. The incident occurred one fateful evening. Carolyn was taking young Fox on his daily walk. They wandered the surrounding streets of the neighborhood, enjoying the fresh air and view of the stars. The pair was completely oblivious to the imminent danger that would soon threaten the helpless nanny and child. A serious threat. After cautiously looking at both sides of the street, Carolyn made her way across the street while pushing Fox's stroller. Despite her caution, the babysitter would not be prepared for the danger that would soon arise. Seemingly out of nowhere, a reckless driver turned a corner and hurtled towards Fox and Carolyn. Drunk and dangerous? The sound of the wheels skidded uncontrollably on the oncoming road, and it terrified Carolyn. The car was clearly out of control, with the driver showing no signs of slowing down to avoid catastrophe. At this point, Carolyn knew the situation could be fatal for both her and Fox. What was she going to do? The biggest decision of her life. In this moment, thoughts and horrifying scenarios flooded Carolyn's mind. She feared for her own life, but the young woman was even more afraid for little Fox. It would take too much time to remove him from his buckled seat in the stroller. She cared more for Fox's life than her own. It was then, as adrenaline coursed through her veins, that she would make a courageous decision. Was it the right choice? Carolyn's desperate shrieks pierced the quiet night. Despite her pleading for the car to stop, the vehicle continued to speed towards Fox and Carolyn. She saw her life flash before her eyes. She saw images of her beloved family and friends, of the many months she had spent at Fox's side. Her whole life stood before her. Carolyn wasn't ready to let go of all of it. Carolyn's bravery. Carolyn used all her strength to push Fox's stroller out of harm's way. In the mere seconds that the incident took to unfold, Carolyn stood before the speeding vehicle, knowing that she would take on the impact of the car after pushing Fox's stroller out of the vehicle's path. A terrifying thought took hold of her. Would she survive the impact? Instinctively, Carolyn raised her arms to protect herself from the oncoming vehicle. The car had slowed, but the impact launched Carolyn off her feet, throwing the woman a few feet through the air. The pain she experienced was unbearable. She knew she had been injured, but she had to ensure that Fox was all right. Fox's trauma. She looked up to see Fox in his stroller. Miraculously, the stroller had been pushed out of the vehicle's path. When the little boy saw Carolyn in her still terrified and injured state, the little boy broke down. He began sobbing uncontrollably, saying, "Carolyn, I love you," repeatedly. Helpless Carolyn. Carolyn's injuries to her hands rendered them unusable. The little boy was still stuck buckled into his stroller, and though Carolyn was desperate to comfort Fox, she soon collapsed in agony. Thankfully, help would soon be on the way. The hero Nanny. The paramedics soon arrived along with Fox's distraught parents, who were immediately contacted by the medical professionals. When they arrived on the scene, they were relieved to find Fox had miraculously escaped uninjured, despite being traumatized by the incident. Then they looked to see where Carolyn was, desperate to discover if she had been as lucky as little Fox. True courage. Carolyn had been taken out in an ambulance for immediate medical attention. The concerned parents peered into the vehicle only to find Carolyn battered and bruised. Her arms and hands were covered in blood. One of the paramedics on hand told Fox's father that she courageously saved Fox's life. Carolyn was indeed declared a hero. How was Carolyn? Carolyn was rushed to the nearest hospital to have her injuries assessed. Doctors soon found out that she had suffered fractured bones in her hands, wrists, and arms. Her entire body was also extremely tender from the devastating impact of the car. Both of her hands were cast and bandaged. They were unusable. The nanny's resolve. Despite her extensive injuries, Carolyn did not regret her brave decision to risk her life in order to save little Fox. She had made the choice without a moment's hesitation. The young woman believed that her injuries were an easy price for the preservation of beloved Fox's life. Grateful parents. Fox's parents were overcome with emotion. They felt guilt, relief, and so much gratitude to the young woman. They knew that little Fox owed his life to Carolyn's heroic, quick thinking. Sadly, Carolyn's weeks of recovery would mean she would not be fit to continue her studies and care for Fox. Her work and studies were paused indefinitely. Doctors were unsure whether Carolyn would ever regain the mobility of her hands. Forever damaged? Carolyn's broken bones proved to require months of recovery and physical therapy due to the severity of her sustained injuries. The young woman may never have full strength in her hands again. Little Fox visited his beloved Nanny regularly. Their bond had grown even stronger since they had survived the ordeal. Sadly, Carolyn's injuries may have been more extensive than they initially appeared to be. A long recovery. Carolyn struggles with bouts of dizziness and recently underwent an MRI to gauge whether she had sustained head trauma that was overlooked in her initial assessment. Carolyn is hoping to get at least 80% mobility back in her hands. Sadly, her progress remains slow, and it seems she has a long journey ahead of her. Carolyn's story would soon make headlines. No regrets. Carolyn and Fox's miraculous story would be picked up by the American media. Millions were touched by the nanny's heroic actions. Her Facebook page was flooded with warm wishes and messages wishing her well. Carolyn would soon require multiple surgeries, but she has no regrets, sharing, "Saving Fox is the best possible outcome to a terrible situation, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. He has my heart. Gone but not forgotten." Though she has received so much public support, Carolyn has admitted the ordeal has deeply affected her. Since the accident, it has been a struggle to see the joy, humor, and sunlight. Saving Fox is the best possible outcome to a terrible situation. The healing process has felt embarrassingly slow, amorphous, lonely, and unpredictable, so I just keep swimming. Carolyn continues to improve with each passing day, and little Fox will forever thank her for her courageous actions.